Introduction. If you're listening to this audiobook right now, it's not by chance. Nothing here happens by coincidence. There's a right time for everything. A precise moment when something inside you begins to wake up. A silent but powerful instant when the soul whispers louder than the noise of the world. And when that happens, what once seemed like just random content turns into a calling. A sign that your awareness is ready to pierce a veil that's always been here, but that you could only see when you were ready to look with different eyes. This isn't an audiobook like the others. It's not a book you just listen to with your ears. It's a deep dive that resonates in your chest. It's a code, a vibration, a dormant memory that slowly begins to stir inside you, because somewhere in time, you already knew all of this. And now, you're just remembering. This content isn't here to teach you anything new. It's here to strip away what was layered over your essence. The dust of programming, the layers of conditioning, the forgetting brought on by rush, fear, control. We live in a time when almost everything is disposable. Ideas, feelings, connections. Everything is fast, shallow, disconnected. But when you hear something that resonates deeply, something that cuts through the mind and hits the center of your being, you can't ignore it. You might try. You might close this audiobook and go on with your life. But once the truth touches your skin, once it activates a spot inside you that you didn't even know existed, nothing is ever the same. You'll notice that from the very first words. They're not trying to convince you of anything. They're not trying to convert you. They don't demand belief, because the truth, when it's felt, doesn't need defending. It just is. And you feel it, not here in the logical mind, but here inside where that which no word can fully translate lives. And that's exactly why this audiobook was made from the heart. Not to be understood, but to be felt. Maybe you've read books, taken courses, followed spiritual content. Maybe you're tired of hearing the same old stuff, empty promises, cliche phrases, magic formulas that only lead to more frustration. And that's okay. You have every right to be tired. Because most of what's offered to you today is just decoration, golden dust over emptiness. But not here. Here, we go straight to the core. We won't climb the mountain by repeating old paths. We're opening a new trail, one that doesn't take you outward, but inward. This is the purpose of this audiobook, to take you to where words become unnecessary, to that point where everything you feel starts to organize itself on its own. Clarity doesn't come from outside. It blooms when you stop distracting yourself with the world and start listening to your own vibration. That's why this book isn't just an audio experience. It's a reconnection with what is subtle, with what is true, with what has never left you, but has been silenced by the noise of routine. It doesn't matter your belief, your religion, your past. This isn't about doctrine. It's about awakening. It's about feeling again what has always been pulsing inside you. A silent but persistent calling. A memory without words, but that beats stronger when it hears simple truths spoken with presence. Because deep down, the soul doesn't need proof, it recognizes. And if it recognizes now, it's because this is your time. Throughout this audiobook, you'll be guided through inner landscapes you may have never explored. But it all starts here, with the decision to listen with more than your ears, to hear with your whole body, to feel with every cell. Because no matter how much you've forgotten, the memory is alive, and it's beginning to rise. Breathe. You're not here by chance. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Chapter 2, The Illusion. Revealed, the matrix is mental. Maybe you've felt it. That strange sensation of doing everything right, but still feeling like you're going in circles. You wake up early, do your duties, try to stay positive, repeat affirmations, seek balance. But deep down, something still feels off, like there's an invisible wall between you and the life you feel you could be living. And maybe no one has ever told you this clearly, but that wall has a name. It's called mental programming. The Matrix isn't some crazy theory. It's not a conspiracy told by online gurus. It's actually a very well-constructed web of subtle narratives. It's not in cables. It's in ideas. And those ideas were planted in you from the beginning, before you even had a chance to choose what to believe. They told you who you should be, what's possible to achieve, what's okay to want, how you should behave, how much you must suffer to deserve something. And you believed it, not out of weakness, but because everyone around you believed it too. The Matrix is a prison without walls because it traps you using stories. And well-told stories have more power than any cell. They told you that you had to be productive all the time, that your worth depends on how much you produce, that feeling angry is wrong, that feeling sad is weakness, that crying is shameful, that dreaming big is dangerous, that wanting too much leads to disappointment, and you internalized all of it like it was law. But the cruelest detail is that the Matrix feeds on your creative energy. It takes your attention and turns it into profit. It takes your insecurity and sells products to cover the emptiness. It takes your fear and offers distraction, numbness, instant dopamine. The Matrix doesn't want you to think. It wants you to react. And the faster you react, the less time you have to question. And if you don't question, you repeat. It teaches you to run, to compete, to compare. But it never teaches you to stop. It never invites you to listen to yourself, because if you stop, if you go silent, if you look inside, you see. And if you see, you start to get out. That's why silence is so dangerous to the system, because in silence, you hear something that doesn't belong to the Matrix. You hear your truth. The big trick is that it never looks like an enemy. It disguises itself as routine, as normality, as success. It convinces you that you're in control, while it runs your life by remote control. Every limiting belief you repeat, every self-sabotage you fall into, every cycle you live on repeat, it's all code. And that code is written in your subconscious mind. It's not you, it's what was placed in you, but it doesn't have to stay that way forever. Because what was programmed can be deprogrammed. The Matrix is mental, and the key is also in the mind. When you start seeing these patterns, when you start naming the voices that whisper that you can't, that you're not enough, that you won't make it, they lose power. Because what's unconscious has power. But what is seen starts to dissolve. Maybe you're now realizing how much you've lived inside a bubble that wasn't yours, how your desires were shaped by outside expectations, how your pain was treated like weakness instead of a warning. And now that it's starting to hit you, a quiet question begins to rise. If all of this was a mental construct, who am I really? Chapter 3. The emptiness that calls when the soul begins to remember. There's something inside you that no one sees, a hole that doesn't get filled even when everything seems to be in place. There can be people around, goals achieved, routines running smoothly, and still, the silence screams. A discomfort without a name, but it shows up at night when the world gets quiet. A discomfort that doesn't go away with distraction or effort or logic. That feeling is a calling, but hardly anyone recognizes it, because we were taught to fear the emptiness. We were taught that emptiness means failure, weakness, depression. So we start running faster, filling every minute, stuffing ourselves with information, entertainment, anything, just to not hear it. But emptiness is not the end, it's the beginning. Emptiness is the space where the soul starts to move. When life out there loses its flavor and everything that used to feel like enough starts to feel way too small, that's not failure. It's a sign that who you are no longer fits in the life you're living. The soul starts to remember, and when it remembers, it pulls you, slowly at first, then harder, until what once felt normal becomes unbearable. That inner hole isn't a flaw, it's the echo of your essence. It's the absence of your real presence, because you drifted away, because you spent too long playing a role, following expectations, doing what was expected, because you were trained to be everything except yourself. And the more you drift from who you really are, the more that emptiness grows. But not to punish you, to call you back. Have you ever noticed how, in certain moments, it feels like there's something much bigger trying to rise up from within you? Like there's a silent intelligence trying to express itself, even without words. You can't explain it, but you feel it. It's like being homesick for something you've never lived, and yet have always known. That's not illusion. It's memory. A memory without shape, but with weight. The soul remembers what the ego forgot. And there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're just being called back to your center, to that point of presence where everything makes sense without needing explanation. What people call an existential crisis is actually the birth of consciousness. It hurts, yes, because the old doesn't want to leave. But there's a part of you that already knows it can't keep going the same way. The most beautiful thing about the emptiness is that it doesn't demand answers. It only asks for space. Space to feel what was never felt, to hear what was always ignored, to remember what has always been there. This is when your internal book starts to open. Not the book you buy, but the one that lives inside you. Written with experiences, falls, silences, and discoveries. A book you didn't read, but lived. And now it's starting to turn a new page. That's when the soul starts to speak louder. It doesn't use pretty words. It uses urgency. It uses discomfort. It uses thirst for something you don't even know the name of yet. And the more you try to shut that voice up with routine or excuses, the more it shows up. Because the soul doesn't go quiet. It might wait, but it never gives up. And if you've made it this far, if this audiobook is resonating inside you right now, it's because your soul isn't willing to wait anymore. It wants to step out of the shadow. It wants to breathe. It wants to lead. But for that, you need to silence the voices that pulled you away from it. Chapter 4: The Repetition Machine. How the subconscious traps you. Have you ever wondered why, even with all your will to change, something keeps pulling you back to the same place? Why situations repeat themselves, even if you move cities, change relationships, switch jobs, change environments? The answer lies where almost no one looks, in the invisible part of your mind. The subconscious is the hidden pilot of your life. While you think you're making conscious decisions, it's already decided for you, way before you even notice. The subconscious doesn't question, it doesn't analyze, it just records. Since childhood, everything you heard, saw, felt, and experienced was stored as truth. Most of that information was absorbed without filters, without choice, without judgment. When a child hears they're not good enough, they don't question the source, they just accept it. When they're ignored, compared, punished for being themselves, that becomes code. And that code becomes automatic behavior. You grow up, but keep obeying a program you don't even know exists. It's like software running in the background. You don't see it, but it controls everything. How you relate to others, how much you think you deserve, the limits you accept, the fears you carry, the dreams you sabotage. These are mental loops disguised as personality or destiny when, in reality, they're just old instructions being replayed. That's why you can change the scene, but if the internal software stays the same, the outcome repeats. The book of your life isn't being written in the present, it's being reprinted based on old pages you don't even remember reading. And that book isn't just yours, it carries inherited chapters, family patterns, social beliefs, collective traumas. You're acting out a script you often didn't write, but the most painful part is that, even without meaning to, you keep signing off on it. The conditioned mind loves repetition, because repetition creates predictability, and the subconscious associates predictability with safety, even if it's toxic, even if it hurts you. It prefers the uncomfortable familiar over the liberating unknown. That's why when you try to break the pattern, you feel fear. And it's not a logical fear, it's a primal fear. Like something inside you is screaming, go back to what's familiar, go back to what hurts, but feels safe. And you go back. Not because you want to, but because you were programmed to do it. The good news is that the code can be accessed, and once accessed, it can be rewritten. The first step is recognizing that the thoughts that pop up aren't necessarily yours. A lot of times they're just echoes of old voices, leftovers from authority figures, emotional residues from experiences that left a mark. When you start observing your impulses without identifying with them, something magical happens. You create space, and where there's space, there's the possibility of choice. Your freedom doesn't lie in controlling what you feel. It lies in stopping the automatic reaction. It's in seeing the pattern, looking at it clearly, and saying, I don't have to follow this anymore. Just by shining light on what was once in the dark, the cycle starts to lose strength. Repetition doesn't stand a chance against awareness. And this is where many give up. Because it's not easy to see how deeply we've been conditioned. It hurts to realize that behind our actions are mechanisms we didn't choose. But that pain isn't punishment. It's a sign that something is breaking. And every pattern break comes with resistance. The subconscious will try to pull you back to the old ways. But if you hold your presence, it has no choice. It starts to let go, and then, for the first time, you write a different paragraph in the book of your life. A new sentence, free from what they told you you had to be. Chapter 5. The Victim Identity. The myth you believed you were. For a long time, you believed the world shaped you, that life made you this way, that it was the traumas, the abandonments, the losses, the disappointments that defined who you are today. And in some ways, that seems true. Because yes, what you went through left marks, but there's a huge difference between being hurt and becoming the hurt, between having been a victim of something and living from a victim identity. The problem is that this trap is subtle. It disguises itself as protection. It feels legitimate. But deep down, it's an invisible cell. The victim identity is built slowly. It starts with real pain. You suffered. You weren't heard. You were pushed aside. You were treated as less. Those experiences are valid, and the pain deserves to be acknowledged. But at some point, instead of just being a phase, that pain became your identity. And you started silently repeating, "This always happens to me. Nothing ever works out. No one ever understands me." And the world, obedient to what you project, begins to mirror it back, until it becomes a vicious cycle. You feel, believe, emit, receive, and everything confirms itself. The biggest modern spell is this: they convinced you that you're a result. They taught you to see yourself as the outcome of the world, not the creator of it. And when you believe that, you give away your power. You wait for others to change, for time to fix things, for luck to show up. And every day that goes by, you drift further from your center, because all your focus is out there. on who hurt you, who didn't see you, who left you. But as long as your attention is there, your energy is there too. And where your energy goes, that's what you create. The victim identity also has its perks, and that's why it's hard to let go of. It gives you reasons. It attracts sympathy. It creates a safe zone where you don't have to take risks, where you can say, I'm like this because of what I've been through. But the question that breaks the spell is, how long will you let what hurt you keep ruling your life? How long will the past keep writing the next pages of your book? Taking back your power doesn't mean denying your pain. It means looking at it without drowning in it. It means understanding that yes, there was injustice, there was neglect, there was loss. But now you have a choice. Keep replaying the same story or grab the pen again. You can't change what happened, but you can change how you interpret it. And how you interpret it changes everything. If you keep saying that nothing works out for you, that the world is cruel, that there's no way out, it's not the universe that's against you. It's your vibration stuck in defense mode because you're still reacting as if the danger is permanent. But what if you stopped for a second and said, enough? What if you decided right now that you're no longer going to live based on what they did to you, but based on what you came here to do? Because you're not here to survive life. You're here to manifest who you are. The outer reality responds to what you accept internally. When you accept the victim narrative, life treats you like one. But when you start saying with presence that you choose to be the main character, something shifts. And it's not magic. It's vibrational coherence. The universe doesn't respond to what you say with your mouth. It responds to what you vibrate with your being. And when that shift happens, a new question starts to rise. A question that changes the entire direction of your journey. Chapter 6, The Rat Wheel, the loop of false freedom. You wake up, run, deliver, get tired, repeat. You live to pay, to please, to keep going. You feel like you're always one step away from getting there, but you never arrive. And even in the rare moments of achievement, peace doesn't last. Soon, there's a new goal, a new demand, a new fear. It's like you're stuck inside a wheel that never stops turning, and the more you run, the more trapped you feel. They call it productivity, success, building a life. But deep down, it's just a modern disguise for slavery. Society trained you for this. The invisible book that runs the world taught you that resting is laziness, that questioning is a waste of time, that feeling is weakness. From a young age, you were pushed into a system that rewards those who follow and punishes those who pause. The system says, work harder, show results, don't fall behind. And you, afraid of being left out, run. You run because everyone's running, and at some point you start to believe that this is freedom. After all, you get to choose which wheel you run in. But it's still a wheel. The most dangerous thing about false freedom is that it looks real. Because you have options. You can choose where to live, what to wear, what career to follow. But those choices are like painting the walls of a cell. They give the illusion of control, but they don't free you. Because what's being controlled isn't what you do, but how you think. The prison isn't outside. It's in the pace, in the belief that if you stop, everything falls apart. And that pace is kept alive with constant stimulation. You're always connected, always available, always trying to prove you're useful, wanted, efficient. The world has turned into a storefront where everyone displays their most edited version while hiding their real exhaustion. And in the middle of all this, the soul starts to vanish. It gets silenced because it doesn't speak the language of rush. It speaks the language of presence. And presence doesn't fit in the schedule of someone who's always running. But there comes a moment, usually in the forced silence of a crisis, when something inside you screams. A scream that has no words but carries weight. It's the scream of enough, of a soul that's tired of spinning without going anywhere. And that's when the illusion starts to crack. You realize it's not time that's missing. It's meaning. It's not money that's lacking. It's purpose. It's not your body that's tired. It's your essence that's worn out from living on the surface. You were trained to function, but not to live. You were programmed to produce, but not to feel. And now, even surrounded by resources, you feel a void that can't be filled by more performance. Because performance without direction is wasted energy. You can run fast and still be lost. The big shift starts when you dare to slow down, when you question the pace, when you allow yourself to step out of the wheel, even if just for a moment. It's in that space that the true audiobook of the soul begins to be heard. The one that doesn't teach you to run faster, but to walk with awareness. The one that doesn't demand performance, but presence. And in that newly created silence, a new question arises. Not a question imposed from the outside, but a question that pulses from the center of your existence. Chapter 7. The Masters always knew. At some point in history, before temples, before dogmas, before wars in the name of faith, there was only silence and presence. It was in that silence that the ancient masters heard the truth, not an external truth, written on tablets or declared by authorities, but a truth that was born within, like a whisper from the soul that transcended time. Jesus, Buddha, Socrates, Hermes Trismegistus, different names, distant cultures, but one same hidden code pulsing in their teachings. You already are. You always were. You just forgot. These masters didn't want followers. They awakened seekers. They didn't offer ready-made answers. They dropped questions that blew up certainties. They didn't impose rules. They pointed ways inward. The kingdom of God is within you. Know thyself. The inner Buddha. The all is in everything. The essence of their messages was always the same. Divinity isn't outside nor distant. It pulses at the center of your being, waiting to be remembered. But something happened. Something that changed the course of collective consciousness. Spiritual power was taken over by structures of control. Simplicity was swapped for hierarchy. Silence for ceremony. The sacred for fear. Teachings turned into dogmas, symbols into idols, and paths into prisons. The living flame became an institution. The verb became ritual. And awakening became a threat to those who profit from sleep. Hermes spoke of mentalism as the key to the universe. Socrates challenged society to look within. Jesus broke traditions to heal with love. Buddha showed the middle way, the freedom of non-identification. None of them preached division, exclusion, or condemnation, but all were distorted. Because truth sets you free, and those who want control fear freedom. That's why, over centuries, the great masters were either persecuted or canonized, silenced or turned into monuments. And so, the living essence was lost in dead form. This spiritual audiobook invites you to make a rescue, not of a religion, not of a name, but of a code. An invisible thread that links all the great teachings of the past. A living book that's not in libraries, but between the lines of your being. True wisdom doesn't need a language. It vibrates. And because of that, it can cross millennia and still touch you now as you hear these words. Because when one being awakens, they reactivate the field of all who came before. And the hidden knowledge lights up again. These masters knew that the mind creates, that vibration shapes, that silence reveals. They left clues like breadcrumbs of light in the dark. But to see them, you must stop running. You must quiet down, question, empty yourself. And then remember. Because what you're searching for is already imprinted in you. It's just buried under the noise of everything you were taught to believe. This is the call of this part of the audiobook. Not just to remember the words, but the spirit behind them. Not just to understand what was said, but to access what was felt. Because when you connect with this ancestral frequency, something shifts in your perception of time, of life, of yourself. You stop being a consumer of spirituality and start being a living expression of it. And at that point, something inside begins to reorganize. A new kind of listening activates, not an external listening, but a vibrational one, and it can only be accessed from a very specific place within the being. Chapter 8, The Forgotten Law, the Second Law of Thoth. There's a vibration hidden behind everything you see, an invisible pulsating field in constant motion. Even when everything seems still, it's vibrating. Time vibrates. Thought vibrates. Matter vibrates. Your body, your emotions, your desires, even silence vibrates. This is the essence of the Second Law of Thoth, often mentioned between the lines of the Hermetic book and forgotten by traditions that tried to hide the real power of humans. Everything vibrates. Everything is in motion. Nothing stays still. And even more, you are capable of influencing that movement. When you think, you vibrate. When you feel, you vibrate. When you desire, you vibrate. And these vibrations aren't lost in the air. They spread, echo, shape. The universe doesn't respond to your words but to your vibrational field, to what you emit without realizing. And that's why, so often, you don't attract what you want, but what you are. This law doesn't require faith. It's as true as gravity. Even if you don't know it, it acts. Even if you don't understand it, it shapes your reality. What Thoth revealed wasn't some ancient superstition, but a deep spiritual science. He knew that the universe is mental, and that all creation starts in the invisible plane. But he also knew that this plane isn't static. It moves in vibration. And whoever understands this stops living like a leaf in the wind and starts becoming a broadcasting center, a conscious co-creator. A being who doesn't just react to the world, but influences it through their own frequency. Each emotion has a frequency. Fear vibrates in low density, anger in short, sharp waves. Guilt carries a heavy load. Gratitude, compassion, and subtle joy expand, open, connect. It's not about faking that you're okay, but about clearing your inner field so your real, pure frequency can vibrate without interference. Because you don't just vibrate with what you feel, but also with what you repress. And the Second Law of Thoth doesn't bow to what you say, but to what you deeply vibrate, even in silence. This is the hidden key behind all conscious manifestations. It's not enough to think positively for a few minutes if your predominant vibration is scarcity, doubt, rush, resentment. The universe doesn't understand words. It understands frequencies. And frequencies don't lie. They can be measured. They can be transmitted. They can be contagious. You walk into a place and feel when it's heavy. You talk to someone and sense when there's something fake. Because before your mind understands, your body reads the vibe. And that's why changing your life starts with changing your field. The Hermetic book doesn't give recipes. It gives laws. And a law doesn't depend on belief. It simply is. The Second Law of Thoth teaches that to change reality, you have to shift your vibration. And to shift your vibration, you have to shift your consciousness, your inner state, your true intention. Because you don't attract what you want. You attract what you hold, what you constantly emit. And that explains why so many rituals don't work, why so many wishes go unanswered. Because on the outside there might be faith, but on the inside there's fear. And the universe responds to what's inside. This law is forgotten because it's too simple for the complex, too invisible for the skeptical, too powerful for the controlling, but too real to be ignored. And those who practice it don't need to convince anyone. Vibration speaks for itself. Life transforms. The flow changes. Signs show up. And what once looked like a miracle becomes the natural result of a new inner state. And when you start to realize that you can vibrate from another place, even when everything outside still looks the same, something inside you lights up. It's like the whole world starts responding differently. And maybe, at that point, the question is no longer, how do I change my reality? But, who am I when I'm no longer vibrating in fear? Chapter 9. You are not your thoughts. Imagine for a moment that your mind is a river. A river that never stops, a continuous stream of thoughts, images, memories, ideas, desires, worries. Day and night this river flows, sometimes calm, sometimes wild, but always moving. Now imagine that you've spent your entire life inside this river, being carried by it. You believed you were the current itself. You believed your thoughts were you. But what if, in truth, you were never the river? What if you're the silent shore watching it? This is one of the most transformative points of this spiritual audiobook. The understanding that you are not the content of your mind, but the awareness that perceives that content. You are not the fear you feel, nor the doubt that invades you, nor the memory that hurts, nor the judgment that suddenly appears. You are the one witnessing it all. And it's in that space of presence that true freedom begins to emerge. For centuries, we've been taught to identify with the mind. Since we were kids, we were praised for reasoning, intelligence, logic. We were trained to think, analyze, plan, compare, judge. The mind became the throne of existence. And without realizing it, we put our sense of identity in the hands of thoughts that come and go like clouds in the sky. But there's something in you that stays even when all those thoughts disappear. There's something that watches, that perceives, that knows. And that something is you. The problem is that the mind is loud, and what's loud tends to dominate, but consciousness doesn't need noise. It's pure clarity, and the more you identify with thoughts, the more trapped you get in the automatic cycle of the conditioned mind. Thoughts create emotions. Emotions feed back into thoughts, and you, without noticing, live inside a loop. But when you take a step back and observe, something breaks. You interrupt the cycle. You return to the now. The river metaphor helps make sense of it. As long as you're in the water, you'll be carried by it. But the moment you step up onto the riverbank and observe, everything changes. You realize there's space between one thought and another. And in that space lives silence, peace, clarity. The field where wisdom can rise effortlessly. It's not about fighting the mind. It's not about forcing thoughts to stop. It's about stepping out of autopilot and realizing, I'm thinking this, but I'm not this. This audiobook isn't about fighting the mind. It's about remembering you have a choice, that you don't have to react to the thought, that you can let it pass like a leaf floating on the river. This is a spiritual skill that transforms life, because a thought only has power when you believe it, when you merge with it. But when you observe it with awareness, it loses strength. You stop being possessed by the mind and start mastering it. It's not easy at first. The mind will try to pull you back into the river. It'll say this is nonsense. It'll use fear to distract you. It'll use logic to convince you. It'll use hurry to confuse you. But every time you return to the shore, you remember, you grow stronger, you silence without effort, and you start to notice something that used to go unnoticed. Peace doesn't come from outside. It's born when you stop mistaking yourself for everything that passes through your mind. This is the turning point. The moment your inner world starts to quiet down. Because real silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the absence of inner noise. It's the space where being breathes, where the soul listens, where vibration naturally aligns. And when that space opens up, awakening begins to approach, because it's in that silence that the next revelation will be whispered. Chapter 10. The now is the key. Presence unlocks everything. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel your body. Feel your breath. Notice the sounds around you. Realize that everything that's happening is happening now. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, now. This quiet, seemingly ordinary moment carries immeasurable power. It's the portal. It's the key. The mind, used to rushing, hesitates. It wants answers, movement, control, but the now doesn't need to be understood. It just needs to be lived. At this point in the book, the listener is invited to do something simple but revolutionary. Stop. Not stop out of defeat, but out of awareness. Stop to realize that the time the mind knows, past and future, is a construct. Only one real time exists, now. Only one true place exists, here. And it's in this space of presence that the universe reveals its purest language. The now isn't a fraction of time, it's condensed eternity. It's the origin of all that is. Advaita Vedanta philosophy calls this non-duality. The I that observes and the world observed aren't separate. They only seem to be when seen through the mind's lens. But when presence sets in, the separation disappears. There's no longer an I seeking peace. There's just peace. No more I observing the now. There's just now. And in that moment, something deep begins to happen. Reality responds. Every manifestation starts from a still point. The eye of the storm, the center of the spiral, the heart of the atom. Everything spins, vibrates, changes. But there's a center that remains. And that center is you when you're present. When you stop resisting the moment, when you no longer try to escape the pain, nor cling to pleasure. When you just are. Presence doesn't require you to change your life. It changes your life completely, without anything outside having to change. But why is it so hard to stay present? Because the mind fears the now. In the now, there are no excuses, no stories, no distractions. The now demands vulnerability, surrender, inner silence. It reveals what you've been trying to avoid, and it also reveals what you've been searching for in all the wrong places. The now is the soul's home. It's where everything heals. It's where every true answer is born. This audiobook reminds you that you don't need to achieve anything. You're already here. You already are. The idea that something's missing only exists when you're absent from yourself, when your center is occupied by noise. But just one instant of genuine presence, and everything starts to align without effort. Life doesn't need to be controlled. It only needs to be allowed. And allowance happens in the now. Maybe you've lived an entire life trying to improve, understand, achieve. And maybe all that was missing was to stop. Breathe, feel, be present. This audiobook didn't come to teach you how to be better. It came to remind you of what you already are, when you're not trying to be anything. And the now is the only place where that can be experienced. Chapter 11. Conscious Co-Creation. Your reality is a reflection of your vibration. Most people believe that their outer reality defines their inner reality, but the truth is the opposite. The world you see is a vibrational mirror of the frequency you hold in the unseen. This isn't just another spiritual concept. It's the core structure of this audiobook, which invites you to finally take energetic authorship of your life. The universe doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to what you vibrate. At this point in the audiobook, the listener is faced with a paradox. Why do so many people wish for peace, love, or abundance, but keep attracting scarcity, conflict, and repetition? The answer isn't in the strength of conscious will, but in the unconscious vibrations held for years, sometimes lifetimes. Vibration is information, and the information you emit, even unknowingly, builds the field around you. It doesn't matter how much you visualize something if, deep down, you believe you don't deserve it. It's no use repeating positive affirmations if your body vibrates fear, rejection, or guilt. Energy doesn't lie. This audiobook shows you that your current reality isn't a punishment. It's just a reflection. An exact reflection of what you vibrate, feel, carry, even in the dark corners you've learned to ignore. But this isn't a sentence. It's a starting point. In this book, vibrating isn't about forcing. It's about clearing what blocks your natural frequency from rising. The universe is a living intelligence that responds to fields, and your personal field is shaped by the sum of undigested emotions, repetitive thoughts, unintegrated memories, and inherited beliefs. That field vibrates, and that vibration builds the storyline of your experience. That's why, so often, moving cities, jobs, or relationships changes nothing. Because who you are being, vibrationally, is still the same. Conscious co-creation begins when you understand that everything you attract is in resonance with what you maintain. When you raise your frequency, the world doesn't resist, it rearranges. But raising your vibration doesn't mean avoiding dense emotions. It means moving through them with presence. It means not denying them, but recognizing them as parts that need compassion, not suppression. The highest vibration isn't the one that looks perfect. It's the one that's in alignment with truth. This audiobook is a reminder that you don't need to force anything. You just need to clear what's blocking your original light. Everything you're looking for is already in the field, but it can only enter your life when your frequency is compatible with it. The universe is never punishing you. It's just reflecting. And every time you raise your vibration, not with effort, but with awareness, reality shifts. The invisible becomes visible. The impossible gets closer. This audiobook didn't come to give you quick promises. It came to offer you awareness. Awareness that your field creates, that your vibration shapes, that you are already the channel through which abundance flows, as long as you stop sabotaging yourself with vibrational codes inherited from a fear-based system. Chapter 12. Awakening is not enlightenment. It's waking up from the dream. Awakening is a rupture, not with the world, but with the veil. It's the moment when something inside you quietly realizes that everything that seemed absolute, inevitable, permanent, was just part of a collective dream. This moment doesn't come with fireworks, doesn't bring crowns or golden carpets. It often shows up in the middle of pain, in the silence of disappointment, in the emptiness of loss. That's the point in your soul's book where the old script starts to glitch. And what was automatic stops. This audiobook guides the listener to that instant, the moment you see yourself from the outside for the first time. When your beliefs feel too tight, like clothes that no longer fit. When your story begins to reveal holes that were never questioned. Awakening is when you start to see, and once you see, you can't unsee. The matrix still exists, but you no longer confuse yourself with it. You start to remember you are not the character. You are the consciousness observing it. This audiobook doesn't talk about enlightenment as some unreachable mystical state. It talks about something simpler, and at the same time deeper. The ability to come out of the trance of who you thought you were, the trance of goals that weren't yours, the trance of inherited fears, absorbed opinions, recycled pain. Awakening is when you ask, what if none of this was really me? What if my life was being directed by a program? What if my pain followed a script? And the most interesting part is that nothing changes on the outside in that moment. You're still in the same body, with the same name, maybe even facing the same challenges, but everything inside changes, and that inner shift begins, little by little, to radiate outward. Thoughts become observable. Emotions no longer dominate you, they inform you. Reactions lose strength because consciousness begins to choose. It's the birth of presence. And that's when the real book begins, because before that, you were just repeating old chapters. Now, for the first time, you start writing, with intention, with clarity, with awareness. And each line written with presence begins to slowly erase the paragraphs programmed by the past. Awakening doesn't make you superior. It makes you more real. It doesn't place you above anyone. It brings you back to yourself. What comes after awakening isn't constant peace. It's an invitation, a call to vibrational responsibility. Now that you've seen, you can no longer blame the mirror. Now that you know, every choice carries a different weight, because ignorance is no longer an excuse. And that's when the true spiritual journey begins. This is where many people go off track. When we talk about awakening, the conditioned mind instantly imagines bright lights, mystical revelations, states of ecstasy. But in this audiobook, I want to reveal a truth that might change everything. Awakening is not a glorious ending. It's a quiet beginning. It's the moment when the soul begins to rub its eyes, still groggy from a deep sleep. Awakening is uncomfortable, and that's why many avoid it. Maybe you're waiting for a miraculous enlightenment, a divine voice, an undeniable sign. But true awakening rarely comes with trumpets. Sometimes it arrives with a tired sigh, with a quiet restlessness, with a strange sense that something is off, but you don't yet know what. And it's exactly there that your spiritual lifebook begins to turn its pages from the inside, not the outside. Throughout your life, you believed you were this name, this story, this set of thoughts, desires, wounds, and opinions. But what happens when, for the first time, you realize you're none of that? That everything you call me is a character that learned to survive in a disconnected world. Awakening is when that character begins to lose power, and something deeper, that has always been there, starts to emerge. Something quiet, observant, alive. This audiobook takes you to that moment, a delicate instant where the rational mind tries to understand but no longer has the right tools. Because now it's not about logic anymore. It's about presence. It's about noticing the noise in your mind without confusing yourself with it. It's like sitting on the edge of a river, watching your thoughts float by like leaves in the current, and deeply understanding that you are not the agitated water. You are the shore. You are the silence behind it all. That's when the game changes. Not because the world changed, but because you changed within it. And that change is invisible to the eyes, but powerful enough to alter everything around you. You start responding with awareness, not reacting on impulse. You begin to feel a new compass guiding your journey, a compass that doesn't point outward, but inward. The question stops being, "What's happening to me?" and becomes, "Who is it that's watching all this happen?" This spiritual audiobook reminds you of something that already pulses within you. Your consciousness is the ground where everything happens. And when you recognize that, the external world begins to reorganize, not because you forced it, but because you stepped out of autopilot. You took the wheel. The world keeps spinning, challenges keep coming. But now, there's someone awake inside you, someone who won't get lost so easily anymore. And here's the most essential point, that someone isn't new. It's always been there. Just buried under layers and layers of distractions, beliefs, other people's stories. Awakening is, deep down, a return. A return to what you never stopped being. And from that point on, you start writing, truly writing, a new chapter in your inner book, not with borrowed ink, but with your own vibration. You no longer have to be who they told you you were. You don't have to repeat stories that don't resonate with your deepest truth. Awakening is this, the realization that you can stop acting and simply be. Now, a new question knocks at your soul's door. If I've already awakened, how do I consciously manifest a new reality? Chapter 13, Deprogramming the Mind, Silence and Noise Fasting. There comes a time when the soul asks for silence. Not out of exhaustion, but out of wisdom. After awakening, something becomes unbearable. Excess. Excess stimuli, external voices, notifications, opinions that were never yours. The modern world, with all its noise, taught you that being busy equals value, that always being online means you're important. But at this point in the audiobook, the invitation is different. Stop. Be still. Step out of the flow. Because only in the emptiness can truth echo. Deprogramming the mind doesn't happen by yelling at your thoughts or trying to chase them away. It happens by watching, without reacting. Imagine your mind as a lake stirred up by thousands of stones thrown in over the years. Every repetitive thought, every inherited belief, every unconscious fear, all of it creates ripples that distort the view of the bottom. But when you stop throwing stones, the water starts to settle, and the bottom begins to reveal itself. That's the role of silence in this spiritual book. Silence here isn't the absence of sound. It's the absence of unnecessary noise. It's when you stop seeking distractions and begin inhabiting your own presence. It's when you hear your breath more than your news feed. It's when you fast, not from food, but from stimulation. The digital fast suggested in this chapter isn't punishment. It's a reset. When you disconnect for a few hours or days from everything that binds you externally, something magical happens internally. You realize you're not missing anything out there. Because what really matters is happening inside. This is the beginning of a book of conscious practices where you start to realize that the matrix isn't just an external system. It's an internal conditioning that needs to be undone. And the first step is learning to be with yourself without needing to fill every second. It's enduring the discomfort of silence until it turns into peace. It's detoxing from hurry, from excess information, from the urgency society pushes, and allowing a new vibration to rise in that cleared space. It's important to understand that this practice doesn't require anything more than presence. There's no perfect technique, no exact manual. You don't need to retreat to the mountains or become a monk. Silence is accessible in the middle of the city, in traffic, during lunch breaks. The point isn't where you are physically, but where you are vibrationally. Are you present or scattered? Are you connected to yourself or addicted to knowing what others think? That's the cutoff. That's the real fast, consciously choosing your frequency instead of being swept by the collective current. When you start practicing this, even for just a few minutes a day, the internal system begins to reorganize. The answers that once seemed far away start to emerge. The ideas that were blocked begin to flow. You're no longer trying to force solutions. You're making space for them to reveal themselves. And this is one of the greatest secrets revealed in this spiritual audiobook. The mind doesn't need more content, it needs space. Chapter 14, Reconnecting with the Sacred. There comes a moment on the journey when silence doesn't just calm, it reveals. It's in that moment of deep silence that the human being begins to remember, not through the mind, but through the soul. The remembrance that what we call God, source, universe, or cosmic intelligence was never far away. It was never external. It was never in temples built by human hands, nor in promises of future salvation. The sacred has always been here, and more than that, the sacred has always been you. This part of the audiobook is a direct call to the heart, not the physical heart, but the living, vibrant spark that pulses behind your existence. Reconnection with the sacred isn't something that needs to be earned. It's not a goal that requires effort. It's a recognition. It's like waking up from a deep sleep and realizing you never left home. The truth is, separation was a dream, a collective dream fed by doctrines, fears, and systems that benefited from your spiritual amnesia. At this point in the spiritual book, the listener is guided to pass through the veil that has always been before their eyes, but that now begins to dissolve. And as that veil fades, comes the realization that every heartbeat, every conscious breath, every act of presence is a sacred act. The divine doesn't hide in the extraordinary. It lives in the simple. It's in the sound of the wind, in the silence between two words, in the sincere gaze of someone living awake. It's in this space that you begin to hear without hearing, see without looking, know without thinking. Reconnecting with the sacred doesn't require religion. It requires presence. It requires the courage to let go of the illusion of smallness and to remember what you truly are, a living extension of the creative source. And that remembrance changes everything. Because when you see yourself as an inseparable part of the whole, fear begins to lose its grip. The feeling of not being enough is replaced by trust. The sense of loneliness is replaced by a loving presence that never fails, never judges, never leaves. At this point in the journey, many people describe a sense of returning, not to a physical place, but to a vibrational state where everything makes sense, where there's no longer a need to fight to be loved, accepted, or seen. Because there, in that sacred vibration, love is already the foundation of everything. You are already seen, already enough, already whole. What changes is not the outer world. What changes is the way you vibrate within it, and that vibration begins to attract different experiences, different people, unexpected synchronicities. Reality organizes itself around your inner state. When that state is one of reverence, openness, and communion with the sacred, the universe responds. It echoes what you vibrate. And if your vibration is love, love is what you begin to find, in the simplest places, in the quietest moments. Here, the book becomes more than a narrative. It becomes a vibrational reminder that activates something ancient, deep, and true in you. A knowing that doesn't come from the rational mind, but from an ancestral wisdom that has always been in your field. And as you access that field, everything begins to align: body, mind, spirit, purpose. But it's also at this point that an inevitable question arises. If the sacred is in everything, including me, why do I still create resistance? Why do I so often sabotage this connection and return to old patterns? Chapter 15. Now that you've seen it, you can't go back. There is a moment in every journey when there is no return, not because someone imposed it on you, but because once you've seen through the eyes of the soul, once you've felt with the awakened heart, you can't pretend you don't know. It's like crossing an invisible bridge. Once you've set foot on the other side, you can no longer fit into the old space. Something changed, and it changed forever. This chapter doesn't offer formulas, techniques, or maps. It doesn't promise salvation. It doesn't bring easy answers, because true awakening is not comfortable. It's a rupture with everything that once felt solid, safe, familiar. It's like the old ground dissolves beneath your feet, but instead of falling, you realize you can fly. And to fly, in this context, doesn't mean escaping reality. It means being fully present in it, but with a different consciousness, with a new level of clarity, with a new vibration. Now that you've seen, you know. You know that the Matrix was a carefully staged theater. You know that pain was a reminder, that emptiness was a calling, that fear was a gatekeeper. That scarcity was an illusion supported by beliefs you inherited, but can now dissolve. You know that true spirituality is not an escape, but a return. A return to the center where everything vibrates in silence. And this knowing isn't intellectual. It pulses, it burns, it provokes, it demands. It demands presence, honesty, action. Because once the spark has been lit within you, it cannot be put out. It might be muffled momentarily by the world's distractions. It might be forgotten briefly in the currents of daily life. But it will never be extinguished, because now it lives. And that inner life doesn't depend on external circumstances. It is sovereign. It is the real calling. This is the turning point. You got here not by chance. Nothing that was said was by chance. Nothing you felt during this audiobook was just content. It was frequency. It was memory. It was vibration, recognizing vibration. And when vibrations recognize each other, time bends. The past is no longer a prison. The future is no longer a fear. Everything concentrates in the now, where truth doesn't need to be proven, only lived. What comes after this listening isn't just another chapter in the book. It's your life. The life that can now be written with a new pen, with a new awareness, with a new choice. Because it all comes down to this: choice. You can keep sleeping with your eyes open, or you can live awakened with your heart on fire. You can keep repeating stories that no longer resonate, or you can create, with your vibration, a reality that honors who you truly are. Now that you've seen, the veil has fallen. The old game no longer makes sense. The old armor begins to crack. And what once seemed impossible, being whole, being free, being present, is now available. Not because someone allowed it, but because you allowed it. The voice that brought you here now falls silent, because the next step is not to hear more, it's to be. If you've made it this far, it wasn't by accident. Something inside you recognized this calling. So tell me in the comments, what moment in this audiobook awakened something in you the most? Your sharing might inspire others who are also on this awakening path. Oh, and if you feel this content truly touched you and you want to support the channel more directly, there's a contribution link available. That way, you help me spread even more messages like this around the world. And together, we keep awakening consciousness.